I've been wanting to say this for a long time. My name is Lynne, and I'm a convicted felon. Anyway, it's wonderful to be here. Right now, I've been out of prison longer than I've been in prison. So, you know, when I say time went fast, it did. Anyway, what I wanted to share briefly is just how grateful I am to the community, the extended community, for all the work that people do and continue to do every day in whatever area of peace and justice they're involved in. And I have to say that during our trial, at the end of our trial, we received news that Glenn won what was
the Supreme Court case.
The Supreme Court case,
Yeah.
and he didn't mention that, or if he did, I didn't hear it. But it was a really awesome thing to be able to take it in court. We were not allowed to say nuclear weapons. We were not allowed to say try it. We were not allowed to say any of these things. We weren't allowed to give our affirmative defense of supporting international law and humanitarian law. But because we represented ourselves with some wonderful legal backup, we certainly got the word in, and we were able to bring Glenn's work into our courtroom, and that was just incredibly moving for all of us and encouraging. So thank you for that too. I mean, that was incredible. Anyway, I've talked to some people about my time at the detention center at CTAC, and I'll be here all evening if anyone has any questions about that. More than anything, it was a chance to participate in a community of women that I've worked with for a long time, but it's a different perspective when you're in prison. And for those of you who may not know, what we did on November 2nd of 2009, 5 of us, and I was the youngest, 5 of us cut through a fence on the other side of the base after midnight on November 2nd. There was a full moon. We were wearing black, yes, we were navy, but it was a full moon. We weren't necessarily trying to hide. We were just seeing how far we could get, expecting to be caught immediately. We had sunflower seeds. We had hammers symbolizing the attempt at transforming nuclear weapons. And we had our own blood, which is a very powerful symbol. We also had sunflower seeds, and as soon as I got into the fence, I started casting the sunflower seeds because I thought we were going to be caught right away. 4 hours later, and 2 more fences, is when we were caught. And it was just probably the most spiritual moment of my life. And that has to do with the fact that we had prepared so long for this action. I never felt frightened. I never felt nervous. It was the time to do this, and I was with a wonderful group of people. And when we got into the base and we were walking, when we got into the strategic weapons area, and it was a very eerie light. The base turns night into day, where they store the weapons, and in November, so there's no leaves on the trees that were on the side, and it looked like a J.R.R. Tolkien fantasy world. And we got into that area and standing so close to the weapons, and the same weapons that I had seen pictures of the nuclear trains unloading in that area. It was just incredible. But the spiritual thing was knowing that we were there, we were together, we were making on the cold ground for 3 hours with the hood over our head was not especially fun, but it was part of the military game at that time. Since then, you know, this whole action is just kind of part of something that's woven in my life. The most important thing is that we find another way of getting along with one another. And I'm grateful. I moved to this community after being part of some other communities since the 1970s. But I moved here when my oldest daughter was 3 months old, and she's 29 now. and it was just a wonderful experience to live and work in Passaic County and to do what we can to be neighbors and friends and to turn things around. So thank you.
Thank you. Support you get from your cellmates, your
the women.
Your women in jail with you.
It was, I don't know what it's like in the men's side, but I've heard good things there too. But the women were an incredibly supportive community of people. And I'll tell you, you know, about sharing and making you feel welcome, explaining what's going on, kind of laying the law of the land out. But also supportive. I was telling someone that a year ago I was in prison, and on August 3rd was the day that Jackie Hudson died. And it's also my birthday. And my oldest daughter sent me an email. And, you know, one of the things about being in prison is how totally dependent you are on other people doing all the important things that keep life going. But anyway, I got the email about Jackie in the evening, and I walked out of the computer room, and in CTAC, it was the women's unit was a two-tiered, 124 women. And the guardhouse is completely there. It's a constant supervision detention center. It's like a maximum prison within a confinement. And walked out, and a friend came over and said, "What's wrong?" Put her arm around me, and the guard, "Get your arms down." Threatened us with going to the SHU, which is the solitary confinement. And my friend was trying to explain what was going on. But that kind of knowing that humanity is, the prisons have no place for humanity. And I think that was the biggest lesson for me, is that the rules are inconsistent. There's no real effort at reformation. It's, in fact, the opposite of encouraging bad behaviors. And so out of the women where I was, a good 70% of them were Hispanic and from Mexico and Central America. And they were serving time before they were deported, and people don't really realize that a lot of times. So in the detention center, you're not supposed to be there longer than 6 months. There were women there up 4 years. And almost every woman was there for nonviolent crimes. And at one point, I was released 2 weeks early. And I was promptly arrested within 2 hours and went back in. And that's where I learned for violating the terms of my release, which they will interpret things any way they want. And if this is online, this is interesting because the people that arrested me were looking at our blog. And that's one of the reasons why they picked me up. So anyway, when I went back in and through that process and I went back into the unit, everyone came up to support me because that is the same exact thing that they have gone through themselves. And I mean, I had nothing at that time. I had given away all my things that I had accumulated in 6 months. And I remember coming up and someone brought me chocolate and apple and clothing, sweats, so I could have something to wear at night for sleeping, and just everything I needed, tea. So for 2 weeks, I lived on the generosity of the other women I was with.
And when they picked you up 2 hours later, was that a game that they were playing intentionally? Tell us.
Well, I don't know because I'm not in their mind, but some of the guards said that they knew before I was released I was going to be picked up.
So they didn't tell you everything about what you should do, and you just assumed certain things?
No, I mean, they tell me, and I signed it because, I mean, my daughter was expecting her second baby, and I would rather be out instead of in prison. So I signed it, but they will interpret whatever, you know, the powers that be interpret things any way they want. So the way I interpreted it obviously wasn't the way they interpreted it. So when they would say, like, don't go to the press. Well, I didn't, but a friend had a video camera and it went on the blog. And there were like 3 violations. So I violated within 20 minutes. And I had this hokey hearing, which we all just kind of smiled at each other. And then they showed me the blog and everything. I said, cool, they're reading our blog. So, but anyway, it's just one of the things. And the saddest thing is that that's the kind of expectation that most of the people in prison have anyway. And we're no different. We're not special. So it's a good brief episode of learning how, you know, the second biggest industry next to militarism exists in this country.
About a minute on what you're doing now.
Pardon?
About a minute on what you're doing now.
So, before I did the action, I gave up my job and I gave up a place to live and I got rid of all my stuff again. I've done it a few times. And we expected to do the action and go right to jail. Well, we did the action and were released out in the street later that afternoon. So I had no place to stay. So, which is another good experience, trying to live out of your car for a little bit. But anyway, the way things work are incredible because the Tacoma Catholic Worker, where Father Vic is, had this house that they were going in the process of reopening. And it's the Erna Gary house, and it's a transitional house for women coming out of prison. So I went pre-prison to help open this house. And so that's what I'm doing. And I'm a grandmother to 2 wonderful little children, and I have 3 wonderful grandkids. And we do a lot of gardening, and I do a lot of listening because more than anything, that's what my role is just to listen.
And she walked with the Peace Walkers about 14 miles.
Oh, yeah, it was a wonderful way. Tuesday, in fact, Tuesday, one of the women from our house and I walked from Tacoma to Des Moines with the Peace Walkers. And then that night, I took 2 women to hear an introduction class on nonviolent communication, which I understand there are folks here involved with that whole project. So it was a full day, and that's one day. So thank you.